All right, we'll talk about Carson Beck's Heisman odds. You know, his odds this offseason have been increasing as, more and more people start to believe that he's going to be Georgia's starting quarterback. Obviously, that hasn't been officially announced. We know Stetson Bennett, Georgia's quarterback last year, was a Heisman finalist, and Beck is certainly getting attention. He's getting recognition. His name is behind some names that, it was obvious, like those guys are going to be Heisman candidates. People like Caleb Williams, people like Drake May, the obvious names that people are going to talk about when they talk about that trophy. And it's interesting because he's a completely different type of player than Stetson Bennett. And the Heisman Trophy, it's something I think that's been an afterthought at Georgia just because of the play style for a long time. Even, before Stetson, who was, the most realistic guy to win it, was it, Jake Fromm was never really close. Nick Chubb had the one season where you thought he might, and then he got hurt. So it's something that doesn't happen a lot for Georgia. So Stetson getting to New York was a very, very big deal. It was the first time that someone had gotten there in 20 years. And with Carson, this offense is going to be a little bit different, and there is a different signal caller. Todd Monken is on the Ravens now, and Mike Bobo is the new signal caller. Now, I don't think it's going to be drastically different, but different personnel. Carson Beck, obviously. Different guy calling the shots. And Stetson, look, 10 rushing touchdowns, big part of why he was invited. The winning, big part of why he was invited. The story, obviously, big part of why he was invited. If you looked at Stetson's numbers, and I don't have them in front of me, I know he had, I think, close to 40 total touchdowns. I can't remember his yardage output. It wasn't crazy impressive, right? Something that's going to be against Carson Beck is Georgia is better than everybody on their schedule. And if they're, blowing people out like they do in a lot of games, he's going to get taken out of the game. And, this is all under the assumption that he's going to be the starting quarterback, but he's going to get taken out of the game during garbage time. And, he won't have a full 4 quarters to fill up the stat sheet. We saw that a lot with Stetson Bennett. That was part of it. Week 1 against Oregon is a great example. He lights up the stat sheet. Now he puts up Heisman-type numbers. And that's what Carson Beck's going to have to do in those games where they're blowing people out. He's going to have to look very impressive statistically and obviously just eye test-wise if he wants to be considered for that trophy. Now, that trophy is not what matters the most, right? It's the 2 that they've gotten the last 2 years. It's the one that they want to try to get every single year. And I don't know. So some of the names that he's behind, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for LSU, Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback for Washington, obviously that transferred from Indiana a year ago and played with Washington last year. Blake Corum's a guy that gets attention for that. I don't know what his injury situation is. J.J. McCarthy is a guy that's higher on the list than Carson Beck. Bo Nix is a guy that's higher on the list than Carson Beck. So what is common with all those quarterbacks, they move around more than Carson does, right? They're probably going to have more eye-popping rushing stats at the end of the day. So Carson Beck is not a statue, but he is not Stetson Bennett. The reason why Stetson Bennett was on the field was because he can improvise. He can make plays with his legs. We saw him get better and better at that. We saw Todd Monken and the staff use it to Georgia's advantage and make it a huge part of their offense. The way that they did all of the side-to-side stuff with Kenny McIntosh, the rollout, all of the rollouts, all of that was designed for Stetson Bennett's strengths, for the personnel strengths. It's going to be different. You're going to see more downfield passing. I think Carson's going to have to put up better passing numbers than Stetson if he's going to be a Heisman candidate. There's no if, and, or but about that. I believe that's the truth, because Stetson's passing numbers weren't crazy, and his rushing numbers weren't crazy. He got there. You can say it was a weak pool. Max Duggan ends up being the semifinalist behind. Okay, we're good. He ends up being the runner-up behind Caleb Williams, who had a really good season. But it wasn't necessarily some crazy pool. And maybe that is part of the reason why Stetson Bennett got there, since his numbers, they weren't crazy. But Carson, he's going to have to throw for close to 4,000 yards, if not that, and probably around 40 touchdowns. That's what they're going to have to produce, and we just haven't seen a Georgia quarterback do that before. Is he the guy to do it? Is he going to step back, sit in the pocket, and launch it for 300-ish, a little bit less yards per game? Is that going to be Georgia's offense? I don't think this running back room is going to be relied on as much as it has been in the past, and I'm not saying that they're not good running backs. They're just not, as a group, I would say, not as talented as some of the other groups they've had in recent years. So maybe they do have to rely on the passing game a little bit more. If players like Kendall Milton or Dejan Edwards or Brent Robinson, if they can't stay healthy, we don't know what Andrew Paul is yet in a Georgia uniform. So I think that they're not going to rely on the running backs as much. They don't have a legitimate's the wrong word. They don't have a very big threat out of the backfield as far as a receiver goes, like they did within Kenny McIntosh. Now, he's got the best weapon in college, top 2 weapon in college football between him and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brock Bowers to throw to. And I think he's got a good rapport with a lot of these receivers, namely the guys who he came in here with in 2020 in that class, Marcus Smith-Jackson, Arian Smith. Those guys, I can tell there's a connection there. I think he's got a connection with Dylan Bell. I think Bell's going to play a lot. The addition of Dominic Lovett, Rara Thomas giving you that depth, not to mention the tool guy you have in Ladd McConkey. This wide receiver room is legit, and so he's got plenty of weapons to throw to. I think that people should be excited about Georgia's offense. He's going to have one of the best offensive lines in front of him. I just don't think, is Carson Beck going to be sacked more because he can't escape the pocket the way that Stetson did? I don't know yet. I didn't think it was a huge issue at G-Day. Now, you can't really take too much from that when the quarterbacks are in non-contact jerseys and you're blowing the whistle the moment they get touched. So it's hard to decipher off pass rush is hard to decipher off a spring scrimmage. So as far as is he going to be getting hit a lot? I don't know. I think does the offensive line get better? I wouldn't necessarily say it'll be better this year, but it's probably moving laterally, just moving a couple pieces around, new tackles who I think are capable. So I think that it's all there for Carson. I'm trying to be as broad as possible for this, but I think it's all there for Carson. The opportunity, for him to possibly be a Heisman Trophy contender, it's there, just as it was there last year for Stetson. It's a new offense for the Georgia Bulldogs. It's not the offense of the past. They're putting up points. They're getting down the field fast, and they got award winners: Bowers, Mackey, Burlsworth, Stetson. This offense is getting award winners now, and it's just better than it was in the past. And I think he's got a good chance. Thanks for watching.